All right, 10 signs that you are pressing correctly. And if you're not doing these things, then think of it as 10 tips to help you press better. These are going to be coming at you fast because, man, 10 is a lot, and I know that you've got things to do, places to go, people to see. Number one, take a narrow grip on the press. As a very ballpark estimation, most guys are going to be pretty much right on the edge of the knurl, not quite touching the smooth. Most gals are going to be maybe 1 or maybe 2 fingers on the smooth. Again, that's a ballpark, but it'll get you started. This is not the bench press. Don't take a wide grip. You want a narrow grip. We're not trying to bleed force outward here. Number 2, before you unrack the bar, remember that you should be setting up to push on the bar, not break your wrists backwards. So if you simply lean on the bar like this, put out your vibe, if you will, you're going to be in a pretty good position. You should not look like you're trying to break your wrists backwards. Notice how much of my hand you can see down here. This is a problem. So we talk about pronating the grip, and that's correct. That's exactly what you want to do. But a lot of times people do some weird things. They kind of like spin their hands on top like they're a DJ. You're not a DJ. Don't be doing this, all right? Set up the bar as if you're going to push on the bar. If you do that, if you try to get into a comfortable position to lean on the bar like this, you're probably going to be pushing on the bar with the right grip that you want. Number 3, get close to the bar and squat down or dip down, if you will, far enough that your elbows can rotate slightly in front of the bar and you stand the bar up with your legs. This means you're going to have to dip down further than you think. You need to dip down far enough so that your wrists can maintain the position that you had before. Remember, you shouldn't have totally straight wrists like this, but they definitely shouldn't be bent all the way back. And it's when people go to unrack the bar, when they don't dip down far enough, that's what causes to break their wrists backwards, to bend them backwards. Don't do that. Dip down. Unrack the bar with your legs, not your arms. Number 4, this is not a marathon. Stay close to the rack. Stand the bar up, half step, half step. In other words, small step back with your right, small step back with your left. Stay close to the rack. Number 5, when you take your stance, make it a relatively wide stance. Your squat stance will serve very well for pressing. You can also go a little bit wider than that. Most people, if they make an error with their press stance, they stand too narrow. Now, yes, I have seen people take a stance that's too wide for pressing. If you can't fit your stance inside your squat rack, for crying out loud, you should probably narrow that thing up a little bit. But in general, take a stance that's your squat stance in terms of width or a little bit wider. Number 6, this is kind of a cheat. It's kind of 2 things. You want your elbows slightly in front of the bar if someone's looking at you directly from the side, and you want your wrists to be straight-ish. So they're not going to be this straight, but they're definitely not going to be bent way back either. They're going to be about 10 to 15 degrees of extension. You should have had that fixed when you squatted down, when you came up to take your grip in the first place, and then you dipped down far enough to maintain that. But if you didn't, make darn sure you have that positioning before you start your first rep. But it's better to have that early on, because the heavier the weight gets, the more difficult it becomes to achieve the correct position, especially with those wrists after you've already unracked the bar. Number 7, eyes forward. This is a pretty simple one. Pick a spot on the wall directly in front of you. Stare at that spot. Don't close your eyes. Don't let your eyes wander. You need a focal point. It helps greatly with balance and therefore the consistency of each rep. Have a focal point straight in front of you. Stare at it. Number 8, before you start your first rep, before you start every rep, tight knees or flex your quads. Remember, we don't usually cue muscle groups, but we do sometimes cue muscle groups when we're trying to prevent movement. Specifically, we're trying to prevent flexing of the knees, bending of the knees, because we're about to reach forward with your hips. And if you bend those knees, baby, it's a push press. It does not count. Don't do it. Tight knees. Number 9, give yourself something to aim for before you start the rep. Aim for your nose, or aim up and slightly back. That's where you're going to be aiming. Lastly, number 10, we've got videos that cover all of these, so for a more in-depth treatment, see some of the videos that we've linked to below. But number 10, think of it as a throw. When you reach forward with your hips, that's you kind of, if you're thinking of it as throwing a baseball, that's you winding up for the throw. That's you cocking your arm back, if you will, except you're pushing your hips forward. And then as your hips slam back into position, in other words, as you stand up, that is the violent aspect of the throw. So think of it as a throw that's using your hips to get the movement started. As always, we hope this helps you get stronger and live better.